Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we've got a special guest for you, Tom from Talkin Investing, which is another YouTube channel focused on the Bitcoin miner space. There's a ton of news going on this week in the sector. We've got a lot to talk about, and most importantly, we're going to be giving you our top 3 picks in the Bitcoin mining space for 2023. So stay tuned for that. Before we get into it, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comment section below if you agree with Tom and I on our top picks, which of the 3 is your favorite, and what your price target is for Bitcoin going into next year's halving event. Now with that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got Tom from Talkin Investing. Now this is one that a lot of subscribers have requested. We've started to have some new YouTube personalities on the channel. Tom is a legend in this space. I'm super excited to have you here, Tom. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me. And obviously, you know, I watch your channel. I see you've gotten a lot of the Bitcoin miner executives to come on and have some great conversations with you. So, you know, you're one of just a small group of us that are really paying attention to this. But I know in addition to the fact there's only a few YouTubers paying attention, you know, in my comment section and subscribers, and I think you probably experienced the same thing, there's a lot of retail investors that have locked into this, but I feel like people are, you know, spreading the word still is a good thing. I think this is a very under-noticed or unnoticed part of the market, and this industry to me it's special.
I couldn't agree more, and today's super special. We've got a lot of earnings coming out. There's a ton of headlines. So we'll get right into it here, Tom. And as you alluded to, we've started to have like Sebastian, Anthony Powers on the channel, and I'm trying to build a community here of a lot of us core people who are involved in the Bitcoin mining space to really give the viewers a good variety of content, right? So I guess before we get into the current headlines, Tom, why don't you give us a quick summary of your channel, what kind of stuff you follow, how often you post, what the feel of the channel's kind of like?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing this, you know, it seems like forever, but it's only been about 2.5 years, I guess. And, you know, some of that, I'm very heavily focused on the Bitcoin miners, so that's now the majority of my content. I will tell you, when I started, it was a lot of small cap, high growth stuff, some of the very popular retail stuff. Everybody knows that we kind of, you know, that 2022 was not only a crypto winter, but it was an absolute nightmare for small cap, high growth stocks. We went into a risk off environment I haven't seen the likes of. Maybe, you know, I'm getting older now, so I've seen a bunch of these cycles, and this might have been the worst one I've ever seen. So from that, the one thing that I took away was, you know, I've been looking at the Bitcoin miners since around 2020, and, you know, I started investing. I believe you're in Canada, I'm in the US. So for me, I had to do a lot of these over the counter, you know, Bitfarms, Hive, Hut. Those were, you know, they weren't on the NASDAQ yet, but to me, they were extremely exciting stories. They had a nice run, and then we all know 2022 was just, I try to show a lot of data on my channel, and I believe, you know, some of what I show, I think this was the worst crypto winter we've ever had. And, you know, it's almost a little bit sneaky, but there's some things that happened this time around that have never happened in previous cycles. So, you know, it was a deep, dark crypto winter. But I did notice a lot of people, a lot of retail investors did stick with this. So, you know, we had a core amount of subscribers, and I'm not a giant channel by any stretch of the imagination, but we have a very loyal following, and I suspect, you know, a lot of the people that follow my channel follow you and Sebastian as well, you know, because there's only a few of us talking about this. So, we've moved. So my channel has moved specifically into, I would say 90% of my content is Bitcoin miners. I would like to broaden that back out a little bit to the high growth stuff, small cap high growth stuff, because I do think we're moving into a little bit more of a risk on environment. But I'm starting to get backlash when I do a video that's not a Bitcoin mining video. I start to get some negative comments like, stick to the topic here. So, but I will probably mix in some more. I have a lot, obviously, I'll say this right now. I think that the Bitcoin mining industry, there's maybe 19 or 20 stocks in total. There's maybe 8 or 10 that kind of rise above to another level. I think this is the best industry. I think it's the best performing industry in the entire equity markets in the year 2023. So I've been putting a challenge out in almost every video that I make saying, somebody drop in the comments, not a company. There's lots of individual companies that have great runs. But even with this little pullback lately, the Bitcoin miners as a group are up 400% this year. So I would love for somebody to show me an industry that's performing that way. Now, I always caveat that by saying, we all just went through, let's not forget the pain that 2022 was, right? Every Bitcoin miner that I follow was down at least 90% from their November 2021 highs by November 2022. So it was actually, even though the crypto winter lasted longer, the absolute peak was in November 2021. The absolute bottom for most of the Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin was in November of 2022, right after the FTX situation. So, that was a brutal run. Some of these, every one that I follow was down 90%. There were some down as much as 99%. So, you don't see those kind of numbers. I tried to explain to people along the way, this is a little bit different than anything I've ever seen. Typically, when a stock's down 95%, 97%, you can almost guarantee they're on their way to zero. But that was not the case with these companies. This was a very unique situation. So, for those that averaged down and stuck with it, and it was, this, we're all retail investors. So, I'm no different than anybody else. It's very hard to buy, at those low levels when it seems like, nothing represents the bottom. But if you dollar cost average in, I've had a lot of my subscribers talk about how even though Bitcoin's still down, 55, 60%, they're green right now. They're up, having bought through the top, averaging all the way down through the bottom. They're green. So I have individual stocks I'm green on. I will say my Bitcoin portion of my investment portfolio is not yet back to where it was, but I mean, it is up. It's up very close to 400% this year, and that shows you how far it was down in the past. And it's a big part of my portfolio. I do kind of talk on my channel about how it's turned from about 40% to over, with this growth, it's turned into over 50% of my portfolio. I didn't buy it that way, but with this massive kind of growth, and a lot of these are buy and holds for me. So, another thing I like to try to talk about on the channel is I do some swing trading. So I will talk to you about one thing that I did do this week that was a swing trade, but 90+% of my activity, these are long-term investments for me, and I view them as buy and holds. And that's why, Bitfarms, I know Bitfarms one is that you're partial to. I am as well. That's one of my top 3 high conviction plays. They were down under 40 cents at one point. I mean, I was, and none of this is financial advice. I always have to say that. And it is important because it's not about me. And, it's not about me. It's not about you. But it's about us providing information and letting people, make more educated decisions. I don't know other people's financial situation, but to me, I did know that Bitfarms at 40%, I was kind of pounding the table like, I don't come up to this valuation. Like there's no method that I can get to this. This is built in to go out of business at this point. And I didn't believe, when you look at the balance sheet. So that's a part of, sorry, I'm really rambling. But I just, part of my background is, not part of my background. My background is, I started my career as a CPA. So I worked for one of what was then the big 8 accounting firms, and it's now the big 4 accounting firms. So, that's my background is in accounting. I made a lot of financial statements. I do, a hobby of mine is reviewing financial statements, which might sound ridiculous to a lot of people, but that's pretty much what I do every night. So, and it's a part of my investing, and it does not help you. So if you're a swing trader or a day trader, reading financial statements is of almost no use whatsoever. But if you're a long-term investor, and that's how I look at Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, to me, that's how you get to which of these companies have strong balance sheets, which of these companies from, looking at different financial metrics, which one of these companies are heading in the right direction. They have what it takes to weather whatever storm is behind us, ahead of us, and have the growth, because these are high risk stocks. So, I harp on that on my channel, and it's not just a talking point. These are very volatile stocks. They're leverage, the Bitcoin miners are a leverage play on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, despite the fact that recently Bloomberg and some others have tried to run with a story that the volatility's gone from Bitcoin. They're looking at a 30-day number there, and that's some very short-sighted stuff, in my opinion. This remains one of the most volatile. You only have to look today, and I'm glancing to the side because on my other screen I have Bitcoin and all the miners up on, and I'm looking at CleanSpark up 22% today. So, don't convince me that the volatility's out of this space. This is right. These are very small cap stocks. Even the larger of them are still, small cap stocks. CleanSpark is, a $600 or $700 million market cap. There's companies that are pre-revenue that are 10 or 20 times the market cap of that in other industries. So
I see where you get the nickname Talkin' Tom. I'll say that. I got to take some notes here to get on these points. But Tom, listening to your story, it's very, very similar to mine. I used to cover a lot of high growth microcaps, cannabis, biotech, all that kind of stuff. And I slowly just found my portfolio, my channel, my personal interests, everything kind of becoming more and more Bitcoin centric. And I've actually had some pretty integrated or integral personalities like Natalie Brunell and Simply Bitcoin on the channel. And I've started to get a lot more involved in the underlying technology, the mindset, the decentralized nature of Bitcoin. And I think that's really why, for me, I was able to weather that storm that we saw, the crypto winter, exactly like you said. I had been buying these stocks for a couple of years. I rode the wave up, and then I rode the wave down, and I just continued to dollar cost average. You talk about these miners being a leverage play on Bitcoin. One of my strategies personally is I've been doing a lot of leaps, so long-term or long expiration call option contracts on a lot of the miners. Specifically Bitfarms, as you mentioned, is one that I'm really excited about. And for those of you who trade options, you know that those are basically leverage on shares. So I like to say I'm kind of double leveraged against Bitcoin. But as you've said, I've looked in a lot of different industries. The only thing that kind of comes to mind is when oil was trading at $0. I'm in Alberta here. A lot of the oil companies just got absolutely killed. I missed that one, unfortunately, but a lot of my friends in the industry did great. And looking back, like Bitfarms at 40 cents, you're thinking, what possibly could have got this stock that low, and why didn't I remortgage my house to buy more of it, So very similar stories, very similar channels. Now, I know we have a lot of headlines coming up. I'm actually talking to CleanSpark later today. They just put out quarterly earnings. Massive increase in their HODL. They've announced 16 exahash per second. We're seeing a lot of the miners really ramp up their capacity in anticipation of having next year. So I want to talk Marathon, I want to talk Bitfarms, and hopefully CleanSpark. I'm curious to get your thoughts. So start wherever you'd like there, Tom.
Okay, great. And I'm glad you just mentioned those three, because I would say, and there's a lot left to report, so I want to be fair. So Anthony Powers, who you are familiar with, he kind of asked a bunch of us. He asked actually everybody, if you were to buy 5 Bitcoin miners today, and this was about a month ago, what would you do? So my answer to that, my top 3 was Iris Energy, CleanSpark, and Bitfarms. So to round out my top 5, I had some smaller cap stocks that I feel were swing trades. And like I said, I do a little bit of swing trade. I use some options like you do, but I always like to warn people, you're experienced, and you said it perfectly. That's a leveraged play on a leveraged play on a volatile asset. So, you got to know what you're doing. But I do love the leap options for the right companies, right? And everybody's got to decide for themselves which one are the right companies. You and I think, are in complete agreement on Bitfarms.
And you know what, Tom? Honestly, Iris and CleanSpark are right up there for me too. I've been buying both of those. Yeah, top three I'd say is very close, if not the same as yours.
Those are my top three purchases for 2023. I will say, I have some holdover positions from the couple of years prior to that still remain large positions. Riot is still a very large position for me. So I don't want to say anything negative about Riot. I want, I want to see more from them and hear more from them. I have not sold any of my Riot. So, just giving you guys a little background, not that it matters what I'm doing, but I didn't feel as good about their earnings. I'm hoping, maybe you can talk to them and I can talk to them and we can get to the bottom of I have some questions for them. So still a super strong company from a balance sheet standpoint. I like Jason. I like what they're doing, but they do have a few, questions that I think need answering more so than, I was absolutely blown away with CleanSpark's quarterly results. So to me right now, of the ones that have come out, and I think it looks like, Bitfarms, Marathon, CleanSpark, Cypher, Riot, and Stronghold. As far as I know, those are the ones who've reported. We're going to get a few more over the course of the next week. But to me, the big standouts, I thought CleanSpark was the biggest standout. Their cost and some of the stuff I look for some specific things. We get a lot of information from these companies. We get monthly updates, as you know. So, that's another thing I love about this industry. It's getting more and more transparent, right? These monthly updates, they have a lot of very tangible things that they can report. And I don't know who started that trend, but slowly, almost every single Bitcoin miner now, gives at least some information on a monthly basis, some more than others.
And some of them, sorry to interrupt, Tom, some are almost like a quarterly report on a monthly basis. Like you get a lot of visibility into these companies. And CleanSpark, as you mentioned, is I think 22% up right now. So obviously the investment community is really liking what they're seeing there.
I was a little taken by surprise this morning. The after hours action wasn't so much in CleanSpark, and I'm listening to the conference call, reading it, and I'm going, wow, this is like, this was already a super high conviction play for me, and they're saying everything that I want to hear. So, I don't want to overhype it, and I certainly wouldn't, for me, I'm not going to average in on a day where they're up 22%, and I always, I oversay not financial advice because it really isn't about me. But, I loved what they had to say. And I think they're well positioned going into the next halving. They talked about their fleet efficiency. They talked about their growth. And there's there's 2 or 3 companies that there's just a massive amount of FUD surrounding. And I think CleanSpark is one of them. And in my opinion, Marathon is the other one where there's a few narratives that just won't seem to go away. And I think, I don't know if some of it is coordinated or if some of it is just that, this is we're still early stage in this industry. The financial reporting across companies is not consistent because, they're still changing some of the rules and regulations. Some of these are under different jurisdictions. So, they're reporting, whether it be in the US or Canada or the UK or places elsewhere. So it gets hard to compare apples to apples. I mean, this is what I do, this is what I've done for a living. And even for me, I really got to pull and dissect the information to try to get apples to apples. One of the things I like to look at is, so on a quarterly basis, I really like to get a hold of what was their cost per coin, not just their energy cost, because a lot of these companies are starting to report monthly. Here was our energy cost per coin.
You're talking cash cost, all in.
Yeah, what's your all-in cash cost? Because that's a much, much more important number to me, and it's one that we really still only get on a quarterly basis. So, the few things I look for, there's only a few things in their control. Did they control their overhead, right? Because that's within their control. They can't control the global hash rate. They can't control the price of Bitcoin, but they can control their overhead. A lot of these companies from a technological standpoint are getting better and better at increasing their efficiency and lowering their cost per coin, regardless of which machines they may have. So, one of the things that they look at as well, our fleet is at, 25 joules per terahash, and their fleet's at 28. And that's only one piece of the puzzle, because managing that fleet and being efficient with that fleet, through the use of different technologies, we see companies like Bitfarms that maybe are a little higher joules per terahash, but yet their efficiency rating is, consistently in just by the simple metrics of here's how many Bitcoin they mined versus how many exahash they have. They're always first place every single month this year. So, that's
So that's a great segue, Tom, actually. So CLSK, CleanSpark, hit it out of the park. Bitfarms, you're right, is continuously in the top in terms of some of the efficiency metrics, which we know are going to be important going into the halving when your power cost essentially doubles, right? Right. Bitfarms, the other big one for me, and this actually started out as one of the reasons I didn't like Bitfarms, was the South America exposure and just trying to manage too many governments, too many rules and regulations in too many countries. And it seems like they've actually navigated that pretty nicely now. They're ramping up in South America in both countries. So why are you so excited about Bitfarms? Is it the efficiency? Is it the diversification? What is it that you like so much about them?
So for Bitfarms in specific, and they talked about this on their conference call, and it's a lot of these conference calls, you really don't get anything. They just go through the financial statements, and it's like, yeah, we read that line on the financial statements too. So, but with some of these companies really do answer questions. And they specifically talked about the fact that they had a 6% price increase in power in their Canadian locations. But they're expanding, like you said. They're in South America. They're in Argentina. They made a big deal in Paraguay. That was a little tiny piece of their puzzle. But I think a lot of this, and this is how I was looking at this, I felt like they were testing the waters. Let's get down here. Let's get familiar with the atmosphere here, the local, the local government, all the rules, regulations, and they've got a foothold now in two different places. I will say, I do think they switched gears in Argentina from, they started out what was going to be a sprint and, get to 210 megawatts and big plans. And they quickly, I think, walked that back a little. And I was totally fine with that. One of the reasons was, not to dig too deep, but I thought a more pressing matter for them was they had, over $100 million in debt. They dedicated themselves to getting rid of that debt. So I think they did a little bit of switching out. You know what? We're in the middle of a crypto winter. This maybe isn't the time to hyper growth. It's the time to get rid of some of this debt, because I do think this industry does not lend itself well to debt. I don't think that's going to change for the next several years. It's just not conducive. The terms that these companies are getting on their equipment in specific, they're getting 24-month term, and you go into you get a 24-month term, you go into crypto winter. There were 6 or 8 of these companies that had to almost 100% restructure their business as a result of that. They did get rid of their debt, but it was at the expense of getting rid of a large portion of their exahash. Now, Bitfarms didn't have to do that. They maintained their exahash. They restructured a lot of their debt. They greatly improved their strength of balance sheet. So that's one thing that I like about them. Their balance sheet's in a much better place. They've now segued back to growth. They found 2 places to diversify. And like I said, I think they're taking the approach where they're going to walk, not run or sprint in those places. So I love all of that. And I do like the diversification, because you don't know any one spot. And I'll say, a lot of these companies that landed in Texas, and, Texas is a massive part of what's going on in North America. There have been some bumps in the road. There's, I'm not saying it's not all going to work out in the end. And for some of them, it's working out better than others, but it's a concentration of risk. So, in accounting, that's a gigantic term. That's a financial disclosure you have to give. If you have, whether it be a customer or a supplier, if you're relying on just one or a small group, that can cause, risk in your investment. So I like what Bitfarms is doing. I really I thought they had a fantastic quarterly report and conference call as well. So, to
Great.
me, the best three so far were CleanSpark, Marathon, and Bitfarms. I don't even hold any Marathon, but I got to call it like I see it. I think they had a great earnings call, and I think they've made huge progress. 2022, I was very critical of them, and I don't think it was me being negative. They had a rough year. I mean, if you're being honest, they got down to, I think last July they mined 73 Bitcoin. So, they were almost at a complete standstill.
Yeah.
So, now this July they mined 1,100 Bitcoin. So,
yeah, Marathon's one I just recently had them on my channel as well and picked up some shares this week. So I'm really trying to take the approach here. I got burned in the cannabis industry, no pun intended, by really concentrating in a few players that didn't pan out. And in this industry, what I've learned is when you're playing things that are dependent on commodity, there's a lot of variables. It's a new industry. It's high growth. It's risk on. I like to diversify. So I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm very bullish on the miners. But at the end of the day, I don't know which of these, like you say, 8 or 9 real players are going to come out on top. So I'm trying to bet on a few horses here. And you mentioned CleanSpark. I saw that big pop today, so I immediately checked my portfolio and figured out how many shares and contracts and whatever. And I've got quite a few January 2025 $2.50 strike calls. So just for full disclosure, when I talk about options, that's kind of my approach to CleanSpark there. So trying to bridge over the halving and hopefully see some good growth in the price of Bitcoin itself. So you know what, Tom, I feel like we could go on forever here with all these companies, but this is exactly the point of having you on, is to talk about our opinions, kind of the highlight reel for the month. So I know you put out great content. I'll leave your link to your Twitter. I know you're trying to grow that as well as your channel above this video. But you guys, if you have any other questions for us, we're going to try and get on here monthly and kind of do some dialogue like this. Tom, we really appreciate your time. If you guys are still watching, leave a comment, leave a like, show some support to the channel here. And we look forward to talking to you again soon, Tom.
All right, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on the channel. I look forward to, maybe doing some of these coordinated things together in the future. And, thanks for spreading the word on these stocks. I think there's a long way to go, so this is the beginning of the journey. So I appreciate your efforts as well.
It definitely is. And like Tom said, this is not financial advice. This is just two guys trying to figure it out. So we'll talk to you soon, Tom. Have a great rest of your day.